Hello everyone, it's Nita and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be starting a new reading vlog, and the main goal of this reading vlog is to work on reading through as many of my physical TBR books that I already own. I have come to the realization that I feel like I'm using the library a little too much, which sounds insane, and in reality you should definitely use your library as much as possible. We definitely need to break up the cycle of consumerism that permeates every aspect of our society. And libraries are a really important resource that we need to support and hold on to. Obviously, you can check out books from the library, but there's a lot of other services that libraries provide, both with having computer and different internet service access, as well as a lot of larger libraries will also have other rentable services you can use. Like I've been to ones that have both 3D printers and sewing studios involved in them. And obviously you can rent other things like CDs, movies, and even board games. And libraries also provide a lot of free programs to get you interconnected with your community. However, I found that for me, my problem is that 9 times out of 10, I will go to the library to find a new book instead of looking through the books I already own. And I kind of feel like I'm using it the same way people who have a shopping addiction and just want to have something new will go out and buy new books. And I'm not going to stop using the library, but I just want to take a moment and focus on using and loving the books that I already own, instead of constantly trying to search and find something new. Two things can obviously be true at the same time. And honestly, I think as a way to counteract that, I have honestly switched to using my library's DVD selection instead of streaming movies. It helps really eliminate the paradox of choice when you only have like 5 DVDs laid out in front of you to choose from, instead of like the endless amount of stuff you can find on streaming services. I also think another reason why I use the library is time limits are a great way to help me do things. I love to have a deadline, and having the kind of like 3-week long checkout period to have as a set period where I have to read the book is really motivating for me. So I figured this vlog would be another way I can hold myself accountable and try and read through some of the books I physically own. Basically, I want to tackle as much of my backlist as I can before school starts, and basically makes all of my physical reading time be switched to reading for school instead of reading for fun. Also, as part of my long-term goal to only have books that I really love in my library, basically anything that is less than 4 stars, I think I will probably end up unhauling. Unless it's a book I can see my wife end up liking. Those are usually the only exceptions to that rule because I want to hold on to those books for her. So any of the books I don't like in this video, I probably will end up donating to said library or give away to a little free library in my area. Although I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, because I actually do think I'm going to like all of the books that I've picked out for this video. Anyway, with that intro out of the way, let me show you the TBR for this video. The first book is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is an adult sci-fi fantasy hybrid. The next book is How Should a Person Be by Sheila Heti. I've been talking about this in a couple recent videos, and I'm finally going to take the plunge and read it now. And the last one I think for sure I'm going to read in this video is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This book I literally just got in the mail yesterday, and I'm so excited to check it out. I gave the first one in this series, Belladonna, a 5 stars, so I'm very excited to see if the second one lives up to the hype that has generated for me over the last couple months. So this is a look at the TBR right now. It might end up changing, and we might even add some books later on in the video, seeing how far I get in my progress with these ones first. But now with that long intro out of the way, let's get into the reading vlog. So I'm going to give my first update right now, which is yesterday I actually did start Gideon the Ninth, and I'm currently at the start of chapter 8. Like I just said, this is an adult sci-fi fantasy hybrid. We are following our main character Gideon, who is an indentured servant to this place called the Ninth House. I'm a little murky on some of the overarching plot details, but I'm going to try and explain it as I understand it right now. From what it seems like, each of the houses rules a different planet in this big empire. Gideon was dropped on this planet as a baby and was basically brought up in the ruling family of the Ninth House. She has a very strong antagonistic relationship with the eldest daughter of the Ninth House, who's named Harrowhark. The main catalyst of the story is that there's a letter that comes in from the Emperor that is calling the eldest child of each of the ruling houses to come to the main planet and have, I guess, some sort of like Hunger Games type tournament that's going to go on. The fighting system seems to be that there is a necromancer, and then there's a cavalier who, from what it sounds like, is like in charge of taking care of the bones that the necromancer needs to use to fight with. And then it's also more of like a melee fighter, whereas obviously Necromancer is using magic. Originally there was a different cavalier that was supposed to pair with Harrowhark, but then Gideon gets thrust in and is now paired up with this girl that she absolutely hates, and is forced to go with her to this tournament as a way to finally earn her freedom from the Ninth House. Initially I wasn't sure, but I think there is eventually going to be some type of like enemies to lovers relationship going on between Gideon and Harrow. I think it's something that we don't see until like the end of the second book, so I'm not really expecting this to be too romance heavy starting out. So far the world building is, I think, pretty classic for like an adult fantasy, in that there's just kind of like terms and stuff thrown out that you just kind of have to use context clues to figure out. One thing that is very nice is at the very beginning of the book, there's a list of all of the different 9 houses, and we also have all of the main characters that are part of each of the houses. So it's definitely going to be very helpful in kind of like figuring out who is from where and like what their relationships to each other are. And already from that intro list, my wife was telling me that she knew some of the names because she had seen other people cosplaying those characters. So I was kind of like already primed to be able to pick them out when they were introduced in the story. So I'm very excited to see where the rest of this goes. So far I am quite enjoying it. I'm kind of dual listening to both the audiobook and reading it physically. And the audiobook narrator is actually the woman that did the second Gentleman's Guidebook. And I definitely liked her when she was playing Felicity, and I think she's doing a good job with the portrayal of the characters in this book as well. So that is my reading update so far. I'm hoping that I can read this, or I might start one of the other 2 books on my TBR today. Lately I've been really sick, and it's kind of been hindering my ability to read physically. So I might end up switching to listening to more of the audiobook for Gideon if I can't focus on physically reading right now. But that is all I have for right now, and I will see you in the next update. Apologies if the lighting is really dark right now, but I'm filming this after work, which I don't usually do. But I wanted to give an update for the progress I've made in Gideon the Ninth. So it's been like 3 days since I did my first update, and I've made quite a bit of progress in this. I currently am at page 346, so I have about 100 pages left. And so far, I have been really enjoying this. I did get one plot element incorrect in my initial statement, so I wanted to fix that here. Basically, I thought from the way they were talking about the trial that they were going to that it would be kind of like a battle royale, like Killing Game, Hunger Games type situation, but that's actually not what they're going to the first house planet for. Basically what it is that a necromancer and cavalier are going from each house, and they're going to the first house's planet so that they can try and become lictors. And a lictor is basically like this elite guard of the emperor that are both immortal and also have like insane magical powers. And the reason they're going now is because the original set of lictors that have been around for thousands of years are now slowly dying out. So the emperor needs like a new set of lictors to come in and help him run his empire. I'm pretty sure that's the reasoning for why they're going there. But basically what they're doing on the first house planet is they're going through a bunch of different like trials to learn like the secrets behind the lictor's power. So it's not necessarily like a Killing Game type of scenario, but at the same time there has been quite a lot of deaths, because it seems like either as part of the lictors like trials or because of like some other nefarious force, a lot of the members from the other houses have been killed off. So it doesn't have that Killing Game aspect, but at the same time there are elements in here that really do remind me of my favorite parts in the Hunger Games. Specifically, it reminds me a lot of like the coalescing of the group that forms in Catching Fire, because Gideon and Harrow are working with the members of the 6th house, which is kind of the like knowledge technology based house. And the Cavalier and Necromancer there, who is Camilla and Polemides, really kind of remind me of Beatty and Wyrus from Catching Fire. And just that like camaraderie and friendship that's born out of like a really desperate situation is one of my favorite parts in Catching Fire, and I'm really glad that that's carrying over to this book as well. And similarly also how in Hunger Games there's like a rivalry between the different districts, there's also similarly like, and even though it's not necessarily like they're going to go out and try and kill them, there is kind of like an antagonistic relationship between the 2nd, 3rd, and 8th houses towards Gideon and Harrow. I did know about a couple of these characters beforehand just because my wife follows a couple cosplayers that have cosplayed from this series. So she told me to be on the lookout for the characters of Coronabeth and Ianthe, who are the twin sisters from the 3rd house. And one of the only things that she knew about the characters that she then transferred to me was the fact that one twin is the good twin, the other one is the shitty twin. And I'm starting to see why Ianthe is this shitty twin. I don't know if this necessarily counts as spoilers, it's just more of my speculation from what I've read, but I kind of think that she might end up being one of the main villains of the series. At the very least, she's been a very like kind of underhanded and possibly antagonistic force so far. I think at the point I'm at right now, it seems like things are about to get really serious and shit's about to hit the fan. I'm really enjoying the series and definitely am going to get the rest of the books. I think the 3rd one is coming out in paperback in the middle of September, so that will be a perfect time for me to go and get the rest of the series. I've been dual both listening to this and reading it physically. This morning I read 5 chapters physically, And I think tomorrow, probably on my way to work and coming home from work, I can finish the rest of the audiobook. So I think for tonight, because I'm at a good stopping place, I'm actually probably going to transition to reading some of Foxglove. I'm just kind of in the mood to start a new book, and I know that one is going to be like so much fun and just like a comfort read for me. So I think I'm going to start that in a little bit before I go to bed. But that's my reading update for right now, and I will check back with you guys very soon. Yeah, baby? So yesterday I finished Gideon the Ninth, and it was so good. I am still debating in my head if I want to give it a 4.5 or 5 stars. I honestly think it is going to lean to being a 5 stars because there was like no point in this book where I ever felt bored or uninterested in what was going on. It was pretty much gripping the whole way through. I think it had a great mix of like horror, fantasy, sci-fi, and comedy. And it's not easy to be able to like mix both a very serious and lighthearted tone in the same book, but I think this did it really effectively. I love all the characters. I really enjoyed the relationship of Harrow and Gideon in the end. I feel like they did an enemies to friends to lovers relationship really well because we get really good justification for why they don't like each other at the start of the story. But then there's them kind of coming to terms with their new emotions that have like taken shape over the course of the book. And in the end, it was just really beautiful to see how their relationship developed, and also very heart-wrenching considering everything that happens at the end of this book. I think I mentioned this before, but one thing that I knew about this book going in is that my wife said there was 2 characters named Coronabeth and Ianthe, and that Coronabeth is called the good twin and Ianthe is the shitty twin. And at one point I texted my wife, I now know why Ianthe is the shitty twin. I am very excited to see where this series goes from here. I think the 3rd book just came out in paperback, so next time I go to a bookstore, I'm definitely going to look for that. I also have quite a lot of reading updates for Foxglove as well. I took the dust jacket off both because I think it looks really pretty and also it's just easier to read this way. I am currently at page 202, so I'm a little under halfway through this book, and so far my feelings are a little bit underwhelmed. One thing I had kind of heard as an accidental spoiler is that Death is not as present in this book as much as he is in the previous one, and he's definitely my favorite character, and I really like his relationship with Signa. But at the same time, I'm also wondering, do I really like the stories in this book, or do I just really like the original audiobook narrator's portrayal of them? Because I originally listened to Belladonna as an audiobook before I got the physical copy, and this one I'm currently just reading as a physical book because I had pre-ordered it, and my library does not yet have this book available as an audiobook. And I think I'm missing Julia Atherton's portrayal of the characters, so this book is not hitting as hard for me as the previous one did. It also is possibly leading to a reveal of a plot point that is definitely one of both my and I think general public's most disliked elements in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. Like, when it was teased, I was like, oh my god, are we really going to do this? I just really dislike it. I don't think it fits the characterization of Signa at all. I think it makes her be more unrelatable, which is definitely not something she was in the previous book. And overall just kind of like undermines her relationship with Death and like other plot points that were established in the previous book. I'm being a little vague because I don't want to spoil it, but I also at the same time think that they might not commit to this like plot point and instead might pivot it to be a different character. I do think I kind of maybe just had my hopes a little too high going into this book, considering how much I loved the previous one, and I did have kind of expectations for where I thought the story was going to go that so far have not taken place, but I'm still going with an open mind, and I am really enjoying pretty much every scene that Death and Signa have together. I just wish it was a little bit more campy. I just kind of feel like it's been like so much bad luck raining down on Signa so far that again, it's kind of missing some of the more campy fun aspects that were present in the first book. and I'm just waiting for more of that like campy fan service to settle in. But I am still enjoying it, and I do really like Adeline Gray's writing style. I'm not going to give up on it yet, and I do have hopes that the second half of the book will pull through. And I probably still, regardless of how I feel about this one in the end, will try and read the third one when it comes out next year. Because I do like the world that she's created, and I do like these characters enough that I would want to see like their eventual conclusions in the last part of the series. So that's my reading update for right now, and I will check back with you guys later. So it's been, I think, like 2 days since I last talked to you, and I have made a lot more progress in Foxglove. I currently am right here, which is the start of part 3, and I think I have under 100 pages left. And to be honest, my thoughts haven't changed too much from when I last talked to you. I still think this book is a little underwhelming for what I had hoped it would be, and it just overall has been a little boring. I'm going to talk about minor spoilers here just because I am like so far into this book. So I'm going to put like the word spoiler up on the screen, and you can just like scroll forward in the video until it's no longer there if you don't want to be spoiled at all. But at the same time, I think all the stuff I'm going to talk about is stuff that is pretty easy to infer, just from like general tropes of the genre and stuff. Anyway, I wanted to start off by saying I did end up looking on the Storygraph to see other people's reviews of this book, and it seems like people were either in two camps. One, where they really enjoyed it and gave it 5 stars, or two, which was kind of the boat that I'm in, where they felt it was a little underwhelming, especially since they really enjoyed the previous book in the series. I did see one review that said the first 300 pages they felt were kind of boring, but then the last section with the climax was really exciting and interesting. So I do have positive hopes that the ending of this book will be good with that in mind. Although I do feel like 300 pages to get to a section of the book that's not boring is not usually my like cup of tea. I'm kind of the person where if there isn't a lot of like development and like interesting stuff happening in the first like 100 pages, I'm more likely to put a book down. So for that to be like triple the amount and still nothing happen, it's like just a testament to how much I'm interested in the series that I continued through the rest of this book. At the same time, there has been a lot of things in this book that I really do like. And I think previously having enjoyed Belladonna so much and really liking those characters, that's like the thing that's really pulling me forward to continue with the rest of the book. One of my major critiques of this book is something that I feel like maybe the genre as a whole is a little bit suffering from, and that is the fact that it's very hard to focus on like healthy, stable relationships and make it interesting, or maybe it's more so that the authors find it hard to make it interesting. Because obviously in the first book, it's more about how Signa and Death became a couple, and in this one, I was really expecting it to be them just like working together like they did in the previous book to solve the murder mystery, except now they would already be a couple, and we could kind of see how well they work together as a tag team. And there would just be the addition of having Blythe now as a secondary character who's also kind of like joining their squad. But because of some like stupid magical like plot MacGuffins that are making it so that Death and Signa can't communicate, plus some like truly insane plot miscommunication that happened between Blythe and Signa, they are now not working together, and I just feel like the lack of the central group working together to solve the murder mystery is really hindering my experience of enjoying this book. But going back to my point about people like being uninterested in writing healthy relationships, I just feel like enemies to lovers and rivals to lovers has really like poisoned the waters for most romances in YA books. It seems like a lot of people consider the tension of the characters getting together to be the most exciting thing. So now that Death and Signa are already a couple, it's like there's nothing that they find interesting to write about, which is not true because I love them as a couple and I think they work really well together, especially since every time Death is in the book, he's always the most like thoughtful and interesting character. And I just find like his support of Signa and the way that he talks to her and just like their overall relationship is definitely like the heart and like the best thing about the book. But I feel like instead they had to insert this pointless love triangle with the introduction of Fate. We obviously know is not going to end up with Signa, and also incredibly obviously is going to end up with Blythe, especially since he's the brother of Death and she's the cousin of Signa. Like obviously they are going to become another couple. And I've actually really enjoyed some of the later scenes in the book where Fate and Blythe are interacting. And I honestly feel like if we had gotten rid of the love triangle aspect and just focused on them forming a relationship, I would have liked the book overall a lot more. I also wanted to mention that I feel like these characters are kind of turning into the same characters from Caraval. I feel like in some ways, Blythe is very similar to Donatella and Signa is very similar to Scarlet. Like right now, Cigna's dealing with a problem related to her Reaper powers, which is causing her hair to turn gray, which is literally the exact same thing that happens to Scarlet in Caraval when she dies for a day. There's also very similar archetypes for Donatella and Blythe. They're both the younger blonde one who's more spunky and direct to people, whereas Scarlet and Cigna are both more reserved and cautious. And they also both have dark hair with a section that has now turned gray. So yeah, that necessarily wasn't what I was expecting going into this book. Anyway, that's a lot of rambling on my thoughts for what I'm not really enjoying about this book. There are some things, like I said, I am still really enjoying. I really like the relationship of Cigna and Death, and I'm getting more interested in the relationship of Blythe and Fate. Even though I have a lot of suspicions in terms of like what I think the long-term end goals are for the book, I don't actually know exactly what's going to happen in this last part. And even though we have focused quite a bit on the murder mystery, like kind of sleuthing side of things, I still don't really know who is going to be the end person responsible for the murder. So I'm interested in seeing what the last section of this book is like. But as it stands right now, I think it's probably going to be between a 3.5 and a 4. It's definitely a bit of a letdown because I was expecting this to be a 5 stars for me. But it's fine because I still can always go back and read the first book if I still want to get a taste of these characters with a plot line that I more enjoy. But that's my reading update for right now, and I probably will check back in maybe sometime later today, hopefully once I have finished the book. So it's been a few days, and I wanted to give my final wrap up on reading Foxglove. As you saw, I recorded my reaction to reading the last like 20 pages or so of the book. I think overall I'm going to give this book a 3.5 stars. I definitely did not enjoy it as much as I had hoped, especially considering I really loved the previous book in the series. But I think overall I did still have a good time with it. I definitely think the ending was a little anticlimactic, especially considering that was the area that a lot of people said was the most interesting and exciting. It just felt like some of the problems that they were having throughout the entire book were solved in a very anticlimactic way, and that Fate at the villain kind of gave up very easily. At the same time though, I still do really like all the characters, and there were a couple moments in the epilogue where I was actually laughing out loud. So I think I am going to read the last book in the series when it comes out next year, both for completion's sake to finish off the trilogy, but also just because overall I still really like all these characters, enough that I want to see where all of their stories conclude at. A little sad that this wasn't a 5-star like I had originally predicted, but I am still glad that I read it. And since then I have started the last book that was on my initial TBR for this video, which is How Should a Person Be by Sheila Heti. This is a literary fiction novel that's also kind of autofiction because it's basically like a somewhat fictionalized version of the author's actual real life. It's described on the back as being part literary novel, part self-help manual, and from what it seems so far, it is mostly following Sheila's relationship as she is getting divorced from her husband, but also talking about her growing friendship with her female best friend, Margot. Sheila Heti's writing style is very direct and blunt, which I really appreciate. She's talking about quite real topics, but at the same time she's adding a lot of humor into them, which I really appreciate humor in all genres, but I always appreciate humor in literary fiction. One thing I dislike most about the genre is I feel like a lot of literary fiction takes itself too seriously, and Sheila Heti has a really good way of balancing both talking about very real topics but adding that like lightness and brevity to it. I'm not very far in this book, I'm only like 40 pages in, but with what I've seen so far, I am enjoying it, and I think I hopefully will like the rest of the book as well. But for the sake of length of this video, I think I'm going to stop the vlog here. Here's a look at the books that we read in this video. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. Consider liking this video or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the story graph, which is linked down in my description, if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time. And that is going to be all for me today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!